Peace, peace, everyone. Um, those of you who are here already, peace to you. Just give me a second, please. Yeah, welcome everyone. Um, this is Chief Yuya. Shalom, Sister Deidre. How you doing? All right. I know y'all are used to seeing Brother Low. Thank you, Madam Kashia. Thank you, Madam Deidre. Peace, Brother Low. And of course, as soon as I always start these things, I realize I should have gotten something to drink. But I'm gonna make it through. So be breaking down Alita, Battle Angel, in this session, and it's gonna be. I think it's an interesting piece. The actual movie, I don't do breakdowns as much as I used to because, like I've shared in the past, that most movies pretty much carry the same thing. You know, at least. Okay, never heard of it. Okay, cool. Oh, you loved it. Good, good, good. So I got introduced to some new media. Um, but yeah, most films pretty much carry similar themes. It's pretty much all the Osirian myth, right? And this one is a bit different. It of course has those elements in there, but this was a cool movie. Um, and then of course there's the anime, there's also the manga as well. Um, and uh, obviously, the manga gives you the most details on this particular character, Alita, and not just the character, but just this whole experience that's happening on Earth at this time. But I'm gonna bounce a little bit with the manga, but I'm gonna mainly stick to the movie and the anime that came out in '93. There were actually two of them. There was another revival after that. Um, it was very close to the movie. A lot of times when you have anime and then someone chooses to do live action, it usually mess it up. It usually really mangle it. But this one, similar to Death Note, they actually did a really good job on. They compressed a lot of the manga in live action, but they it was good. They put a lot of the right characters in there. The casting was good, and they left a lot of concepts intact. All right, so I jotted down some notes. I know Brother Low always has his notes, and a lot of times, well, not a lot of times, every time when I do breakdowns, I never have notes, but I want to keep informed with what the brother has established. So I jotted down a few notes, and probably the big difference with my notes and Brother Lowe's notes is that mine are not in order. Uh, I told myself to watch the film again, like maybe earlier today or yesterday, but I actually did not. So I was gonna watch it and then write some chronological notes, but I didn't. So yeah, we're gonna flow. We're just gonna flow with it, right? But there's a lot in this particular film, from a philosophical perspective, from a spiritual perspective, and from you wish the video was better. I'm not sure which video you're talking about. You mean the anime? You mean the live action? Which one? Um, but yeah, there's a lot of concepts in here, piece of queer, that that you can pull from it. Like even my video. Who cares what my video looks like? As long as you can hear me. Don't worry about that. Leave it alone. If the sound is good, that's all that matters. Don't worry about the video. This ain't no, yeah, ain't gonna do no full fledged production, Viacom production or movie breakdown. Nah, you good. But yeah. So the thing about it is that there's a lot that you can do with this film in terms of like extracting. Like honestly, thank you, Sister Kashia. You can create a whole philosophy from this particular film because it's so much, but you just have to know how to pull. So like I said, I'm a my notes are like very scattered. Some of the stuff that I wrote down, but like I said, I want to keep to your understandings with Brother Lowe with that particular tradition. So first thing to understand, we're talking about Battle Angel, and of course the live action film was Alita, Battle Angel, and one of the things that you want to catch, or you could catch, right, is Battle Angel. As soon as you hear Battle Angel, you already know um, we're talking we're talking about a spiritual film, right? I don't want to say too much too soon, but we're talking about a spiritual film. And then when you see like the movie posters, uh, they pretty much told you the beginning and the end of the film just in the poster. Like you practically didn't even have to watch the film just by looking at the poster. Between the words that were used, and between the images that we use, like the Damascus sword, which she holds, which is a Sith, which is a reference to Kronos or Saturn, or in a Orisha tradition, we would say Oba, but the Reaper of Souls, basically. Peace, DJ Maxine. So um, there was a lot, like just in the poster and even in the wording, right? I think I wrote down some notes on that, but um, it might be at the bottom of the page because, like I said, it's not chronological, but just roll with me. You know what I mean? Just roll with me. So one of the first things, when you check out the actual original series before the live action, it was originally called Gundam, right? And Gundam is or Gun. It's important, and I could be pronouncing that a little wrong. I don't speak Japanese, but it's important to understand that because there's a scene in the movie um, where it comes back up, right? So I'm going to give you the premise of the movie a little bit, and then we'll get into some of the details. And I'm also just giving you a little premise as people are coming in. Um, so essentially, you have the main character who's Alita, and Alita is a cyborg, right? And she's found in a scrap heap, in a junk heap, by an individual by the name of Dr. Ito, right? And when he's just rummaging through this scrap heap or through this junkyard and just looking for parts. He works on, we'll say, cyborgs for now. We're going to get into the cyborg thing in a minute, but he repairs cyborgs. And so he's in the junkyard just looking for stuff that he could find, eyeballs and things like that. He finds this cyborg head and a partial torso, right? And he realizes when he scans it, like, oh, it's still alive, right? Now, one of the important things to understand, and I'm going to give you the crude basics before I go into like more of the philosophical. I think it's easier. Um, so one of the things to understand is that where he lives, which is a place called Iron City, short for Scrap Iron City, is there's a huge garbage heap because basically there's a city above this particular place by the name in the live action they call it Zalem, right? And Zalem basically there's like a garbage chute, and it drops all of its garbage down onto Iron City, right? Real simple, sorta, because there's a lot to that, right? So Dr. Ito, he goes to the garbage and sees what he can find. Now, of course, Zalem is a city that is, there's a wealth divide between those who live in Iron City down below and those who live in this suspended city known as Zalem, which is held in the air by anti-gravity mechanisms, right? And we'll get into the cities for a second in a minute. So the concept here is that he finds this cyborg, he takes it back home, he repairs her, and he gives her a body that he had originally intended for his own daughter, right? Um, the daughter that he had with another with a woman played by Jennifer Connelly, Dr. Shirin, right? So we'll get into Dr. Shirin in a minute, right? So I'm just kind of taking you through the chronologics slightly. So yeah, he takes her back to his lab, and so you have this. I'm gonna touch on the philosophical a little bit. You have this idea, which is very common in a lot of films, of this male scientist who assembles or reassembles or creates this female bot. I mean, that's very common in a lot of different films and literature works. The idea of the male creating the female, right? But one of the things about Alita, I'm gonna have to jump around a little bit. Uh, Low is better at, and then this happened, and that happened, and that. Well, we all got our own style. Um, One of the things about this particular film, right? It's really a feminist film on some other levels, right? But that good femininity, not it's not a toxic feminist film. It's really about identification and self definition. And even though she is assembled by a man, or reassembled, rather, I should say, um, later on, we're going to see that she defines her own self shape through her own efforts. I'll get into that in a moment, right? So, again, essentially, he takes her, he puts her back together. But the thing is that she's completely lost her memory, right? She's completely unaware of even her own name, her past, anything, right? So, which again is another common theme in sci-fi. You have this male who assembles, usually it's some kind of sex bot, right? That's the typical theme. But if you watch the original manga, they were pretty good with not doing that. A lot of times they just throw that in gratuitously. It'll be this very innocent, like if you watch the movie, I want to say The Fifth Element, the one with Chris Tucker and Bruce Willis, and the girl who does the Resident Evil films, right? The woman who does the Resident Evil films. Uh, it's that same concept, like innocent, blind to the world, doesn't know what's going on, but at the same time will either have all of these very killer, deadly fighting skills, or some type of hyper intelligence, or some really untapped and primal sexuality, you see. So that's the concept that it's a common trope that's used in just different films, because it's to emulate kind of the blank canvas that a man may want a woman to be, if you will, right? But they didn't do that here. They like were really, did a really good job in terms of when she's put back together, she seems like they put it back together as like a young girl. And even when you look at the manga, like she's looks like she's about 13, 14 years old, right? So they start her on that level, which is again a level of innocence. And one of the things that you'll see with the live action movie, which is similar to the anime as well, she has these big, really round brown eyes, right? And those large eyes, which there was a whole thing in terms, shalom, shalom, Madam Precious. There was a whole thing with the special effects. Like there was a lot of behind the scenes special effects. And that was one of the things that came forth, like how are we going to do these eyes, right? And the science of the eyes, they have to do them big like that because that represents her innocence. It's the big wide eye look, right? So she's this deadly individual, but at the same time, she's got this innocence to the world. Very important point. Okay, very important point. Now, so just if you're taking notes, write that or hold it. Her innocence to the world is key. Yeah, like Bambi, exactly, like Bambi. You know, so over time, she gets acquainted with Dr. Ito, who becomes like a father figure to her, right? And she meets a young boy. Well, in the anime and the manga, he's a bit younger, but she meets a boy named Hugo, right? Befriends Hugo, and just like innocence and naivety, she very quickly falls in love with him, because that's what you're supposed to do. Now that there's also a deep science to that too. We'll get into that. So if you write a note, just put the Wizard of Oz. She falls in love with Hugo. It's like a Wizard of Oz thing. I'll explain. Right? And he starts to teach her the ropes. Like this is what it's like in the city. He's starting to explain, like, one of the things that's said is very key is like, this city changes people. It makes you do things you don't want to do. Another key line, like this again, this was a movie like you could just go from scene to scene, and like there was so much science from scene to scene, and the manga even more so. You know what I'm saying? From page to page, like whoa, they're just dropping it. Japanese are really good at that. Like they get their occultism down pat. I'm I'm flowing off the dome, and I told you I had notes I wrote. I'm not even looking at them, so let me do the low thing. So yeah, I already said that. So right, so let me just go back to the name again. Gamu or gum, it actually means literally gun dream or dream of the gun, right? That's very important because there's a scene that you see with Dr. Ito at one point, and he's looking at her like when he's reading her vitals, and he says, "This is was a big hint." He said, "What are you dreaming of? My little angel." Right? So there is all these references to her angelic state, which lets you know, like, okay, we're dealing with some angel heaven stuff, right? Um, and we'll get into that. Now, one of the things I want to share about this particular manga, this particular anime, even live action, you might see certain similarities with this particular film, and you might almost feel like, oh man, this was just like this, or this is just like that. But one of the first things you want to remember is that this originally came out in 1990. Okay, so a lot of what you may be comparing it to were actually knockoffs of this. This was the original. You know, a great example in one that might remind you. You look at it and you see some of the similarities with this particular one was the film Elysium with Matt Damon. It had again a very similar kind of concept with there being people who lived at like the bottom of society, and then up in the air there was this other place which was Elysium for them, but there was this place where people lived better and so forth, which was really, it was heaven. It was a nod to heaven, and that's where everybody wanted to be if they could possibly go. They wanted to be up there in heaven. So Elysium is a very similar concept, but this actually came out. I mean, Elysium, the movie, I think, what was that, 2013, something like that? I don't know. But this, again, 1990, so this is where a lot of other films stole their concepts from, from this particular manga. Um, Now, I'm just checking my notes. So, I prefer to flow off the dome. But, well, the, 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 the manga ran from like 91 to 95. Yukito Koshiro was the creator, and he shut it down himself. It wasn't canceled or anything like that, but he actually shut it down in 95, and then he did a reprisal again in 2000, right? So the thing about it, again, we're gonna let's go. We'll go scene by scene a little bit. So she meets Hugo. Long story short, she's kicking it with him. She's learning about life, and she eventually finds out that Dr. Ito, who again is like a father figure, is actually you could say like a bounty hunter, right? And she follows him one night because there's this rash of young ladies being killed, and what's actually happened is that their body parts are being harvested, right? And this is brings in a person by the name of Vector, but we'll get into Vector for a second, right? Um, so she follows him. He gets attacked. She helps him, and in helping him, like she finds out, like, oh, I could fight. Like I could really fight, you know. And of course, he sees it and finds that out too. Now, ultimately, this place Zalem, which in the original, the Japanese anime, they called it Salem, like with the S, Salem, and the manga, it's called Tiferes. Very important. Now, for those of you who have ever done any kind of Kabbalah exploration, then as soon as you hear Tiferes, that should sound pretty familiar, right? When you hear Tiferes, obviously they're talking about Tiferet, right? So, yeah. So, just doing a couple things at once. Let me not do that. You know what? Let me do this one thing. Let me do it the Zen way. Zen really enforces do one thing at one time, right? So again, they, she helps him. She finds out like, whoa, I can fight. And what's very interesting in that moment is that one of the things that you learn about the femininity of Alita is that, like remember, she's lost her memory. She has no sense of identity. And when she begins to do, her memory returns. So her identity is recovered through action. It's not recovered through study. And Dr. Ito is like, if you watch the anime, she's like, oh, I want to be a bounty hunter now. Like I want to do this. And he was like, no, you don't have to do anything. All you have to do is stay home and be pretty. I'll take care of you anything you need, right? And she's like, nah, I'm not your little doll for you to sit on a shelf and to curate and it's not. And that was a beauty. That beauty. I'm reading your comment. That was a beautiful um, insertion of her feminine space. Like I said, this is really, if you want to talk about healthy feminism, this was a good example of healthy feminism. Because she she was reincarnated. She represented reincarnation. She reincarnated into another world, right? And technically, the world that she reincarnated from, she couldn't return to. Dr. Ito had made that point, and he said, no one can get up there. We'll explain some of that a little bit later, right? So when she began to fight, she realized like, oh, I'm a weapon. Now the thing about it is that we gotta. I'm jumping. I'm gonna have to jump because that's my style, right? Um, we already received a foreshadowing of that aspect with her. For those of you who watched it, you know that when she first came out of the bed, when she was in Dr. Ito's home, she goes to the bed and she walks to the mirror and she touches it with her new, cyborg finger, and she says, "Well, right now that stuff is, when you get things like, the stuff is not thrown in there, for no reason at all." Um, when I saw that, that the first time I saw that, I said, what is that? That's something. It's something." And I'm thinking, well, are we just talking about going deep into the well? Is this like an Alice in Wonderland type of concept? But then I'm looking at the mirror. She's reflecting something, right? Well, one of the concepts there that, and again, when it comes to breakdown or when it comes to any sort of symbolism, I personally don't like to say this means this, that means that. I think that's a very arrogant thing to do, but we could say that it might mean this, right? So in that moment, what that may have meant, and it might mean something different to you. You might say, well, no, the well thing. Let's going down the well, the reflections and the eternal reflections of different things. She comes from one world to another world to another world, right? Maybe flow, wherever it takes you. But um, I thought about her name, Alita, right? Now, Alita is a very key name, right? See if I wrote any extra notes on that. Anything that I'm not going to say that I might forget. Um, eh, I kind of know all this. So yeah, so Alita is it means the chosen, right? So that's an important thing. And then of course you have Ali in there and Al, um, which again, the or the divine, right? Where you also have alien, right? Alita wasn't her original name. Her original name was actually Yoko. We'll get into that, right? So, but we have to go by the movie because we're studying the occultism and the symbolism and the decoding of Alita. So we're not just decoding what the the creator of the actual art did. We're actually also decoding what Hollywood did as well, right? Because that's really where the occultism is. When the Japanese when they do these mangas and the anime, it's usually Christian based. It's Bible based. Let's just say that. It's spiritual. They're always spiritual. But then when Hollywood grabs them, that's when it becomes they it's like going to the mirror. They flip it to the dark side of that spiritual story, right? So we're doing both at the same time, right? And her name is a great example of that. And of course, in the movie, you don't find out her name is Yoko. I just know that from the manga, right? You don't even know that in the anime as well. That she was actually born a human baby and her parents were killed in an attack. But I'm not going to focus on that too much because that it's not in the movie or the anime anyway. Um, but anyway, let's go back to Alita. So she touches the mirror and she says, "Well," right? So again, I'm thinking reverse reflection because also she's a battle angel, but she's a female. Most of the time we see angels depicted they're male, and you think about a warrior, we usually think of a male, right? Typically. So now we have a flip going on, and she's like a child, basically. So if you follow along with that flip, and you have peace, Abba Cruz, you have this concept of the chosen one, right? Or the one who is lifted above, the one who soars above. Also in Old English or even French, Alita means the winged, Winged. That one who has wings, like an angel, right? But if you think about the mirror reflection concept and you flip the name around, you have the name Attila, right? So, and again, I'm not saying peace by Marlene. I'm not saying that it means that. This is what I gathered when I'm looking at it. You might look at it and see something different, and that's the beauty of it, right? But when I look at the movie poster and I see that she's holding what is called the sword of Damascus, which she later acquires, right? Um, and then I'm looking at her name and I look at the mirror reflection and I flip her name Attila, okay, like Attila the Hun. Attila had this is the history. He had a sacred sword that was said to be a deified sword that came from the gods, right? So we have this concept. Yeah, the sword was Damascus steel, but the thing about the sword is that, and this goes for like you have to go further in the story. But long story short, the thing about the sword for individuals like Alita, she was essentially able to channel her blood into the sword. So you would notice at certain times when she would use it to attack, it would turn blue because she had a red and blue liquid that was flowing through her body, which we see Dr. Ito filling her with, right? It gets real deep, but we'll not go too deep, right? Um, so anyway, again, just kind of looking at her name, names are always important in well in anything, you know. But names are important. So like I said, you have that's what above, that which is above, excellent, high born, all of these different things like that. Um, and like I said, when I looked at the Sith sword, that was considered to be for Attila. He had the holy sword, of the I think it was called the Scythians, right? So that right there was a clue, right in the beginning. Like, okay, she's a straight killer. Like, she's even though she's a sweet, innocent girl with the big eyes and eating oranges and ooh, I like chocolate. She's a straight killer. Yes, brother Lowe, I'm saying yes to you. So, like I said, he says to her, oh, and I should also add, this is in my notes. It's good I looked at my notes. See what I'm saying? Um, right. That sword was considered to be given to Attila by Mars, right? That's where it was said the sword came from. Now that's an important part, right? Matter of fact, let me just jump to this. No. Let me. I'm gonna do the low thing. Let me go through the story first. Okay, so helps Ito, right? She helps Ito. She says, "I want to be, a hunter warrior." He's like, "Nah, boom, boom, boom. You stay home, be pretty." She's not happy with that at all, right? So eventually, she does. Um, well, the anime and the movie are different, right? So we'll do the movie version. So the movie version, she goes out on an outing with Hugo, with some of the friends, with some of his friends, and she sees this ship that has been, it crashed on Earth from Mars, right? Now, this is an important thing because one of the reasons why the Earth or where they live is in the condition that it is because there was a war, right? And because of the war, there were people who were from Mars who were essentially they were cyborgs who went to war with people who were like the people who were in the floating cities because there were multiple floating cities. It wasn't just Tiferes. There was also one above Tiferes that was called Ketheres. Again, for you Kabbalah people, you might Tiferet Kether. You might be putting some stuff together, right? That wasn't brought out in the actual movie. They just called it Zalem, right? And again, um, you can hit that from different angles because you have Tiferes, which it was called in the manga. But even if you want to flow with the Zalem, then you and again in the Japanese it was Salem. You could associate that with Jerusalem, right? Um, and then once you associate it with Jerusalem, because you know Jeru means city, Salem means peace. So Jerusalem is a city of peace. Like Jeru the Damager. Jeru the Damager is almost like Alita the battle angel. Like you're supposed to be about peace, but you about battle. You're an angel, right? So same thing with Jerusalem, right? But we know that Zalem is a city in the sky. So we already have the Jeru part, but it's just in English. Oh, the sky, the city in the sky, which is named Salem. Well, city is Jeru. So city, Jeru, Salem, Jerusalem. Easy, right? Now, that may seem like unimportant, right? But it's very important. Like we'll get into it. So anyway, let me I want to just get through the story quick so I can get to the philosophy of it. Um, so she finds the ship, she dives underwater, and she knows how to navigate through the ship automatically because again, her memories and her identity are activated when she's doing. So when she encounters this ship, she realizes like, yo, I know this technology. I've been on this ship before, right? She finds a berserker suit, right? So the suit that she has that Dr. Ito made for her again, like I said, it was originally made for his daughter. His daughter was in a wheelchair, and he had made a body for her, but she was killed before he was able to attach her to it, right? Um, and she was like probably paralyzed. She was in a wheelchair, probably paralyzed from the waist down. Because one of the things you see about a lot of the cyborgs that he worked with, they seem to basically be like amputees, at different levels, right? But we'll get into the cyborg thing, right? So she gets the suit, she brings it back to Dr. Ito, and he's like, "Yeah, this is some super advanced technology, but it's old, right?" We'll get into that. The old thing is important. It's very important. So, long story short, stuff starts popping off. She gets into a fight with one of the cyborgs, and I'll come back to that. So I'm just gonna go through the story real quick. Gets through the fight in the fight. One of the cyborgs, he destroys her body. She ends up having to use that berserker body. Dr. Ito then attaches the berserker body to her, and she becomes like a different person. We also find out that she's older than what we originally thought, because with this new berserker body, it uses nanotechnology. So her thoughts and her image of herself actually shaped the form of the body. Now, this was a part of her coming into her identity. The first body he gave her, and it was for her daughter. And one of the things she said to him was like, "I'm not your daughter, right? But this is the body I have." So after she gets into this fight, we'll get into that in a minute. She gets this other body, but now this body responds to her thoughts, so it's shaped like her. Long story short, she uses the body. She joins this tournament, or this sport that they have, um, called rollerball, and that's an important thing, right? Not necessarily the sport itself, but kind of the sport. We'll get into that. And there's a whole thing that happens. She fights some cyborgs, and her friend Hugo gets into some trouble with one of the cyborgs. We find out that he's actually like, he works for a guy named Vector, who is played by Ali Mashallah, which is again very key. We got the name Ali in there. Um, it's something that you should understand about Hollywood. Even their actors are a part of the ritual, right? So they'll use certain actors. Like there's a reason. There's a reason that Samuel Jackson is always yelling in every movie. There's a reason they do that. You know, so not only are they cementing a particular ritual in the minds of the watcher, but they're also using certain individuals on and off screen as a part of that ritual, right? So that's something you got to always remember. So anyway, she plays this rollerball. She does really well because she's got her new mega body. Um, and Hugo ends up getting like darn near killed. She's able to sustain Hugo through her heart, but he just has his head is severed, and Dr. Ito builds a body for him, which is cybernetic. He tries to use that body to get up to Zalem because that was his only dream he ever wanted in the world. He gets killed, and Alita then joins, like now becomes really a rollerblade, a rollerball like participant, like a hero. Because one of the things, I want to get into the philosophy now, that's why I'm flying through it. So one of the things with the rollerball, because um, if you become the grand champion, you are able to go to Zalem. That's the promise. Now let's get into that because that's where it gets funky, right? So I'll use some of my notes. I might have wrote some good stuff here. I don't know. I jotted down some stuff really quickly. Um, One of the things that's important, we talk about ritual, but Rosa Salazar is who plays Alita in the movie. And Salazar, she does a great job. Um, but if you ever watch the series Undone, which is a great series, I suggest if you haven't seen it, go see it. You're gonna like it. It's really, really good. Um, but she plays in Undone as well, which is uses like two dimensional art as well. as far as for the characters, which basically looks like a cartoon, right? So it's again that affecting. Again, remember they use the same people for the rituals. And one of the things that you'll notice uh, in the anime, they were positioned in Kansas City, right? But technically, that would be scientifically impossible. So they brought them to a Latin country. Now I'm going to explain why. Uh, you had this city suspended in the air. This is when it gets. This is where it gets good, right? And of course, like in the beginning of the movie or even the manga, they talk about a fall. Once you hear them say a fall, you already know they're talking about the fall of man, right? It's automatic. We're going to be talking about the fall of man. The same thing with Elysium, where you have these people who are in this will within the will. This is an Ezekiel vision, right? You can go watch Elysium and you'll see like, oh wow, okay, it's a very similar kind of thing without all of the live action per se, but the same concept of these overlord rulers and everybody wanting to get to this place, this which is heaven, basically, right? To them. Now the important thing, we'll look at a couple things. One of the things is that the actual live action movie came out February 14th, right? So that within itself was a ritual, right? So we have Alita, Battle Angel. You look on the poster, she's got the red blood marks underneath her eyes, which is actually a ritual of Venus, right? So we have this in Venus slash Aphrodite when they do the blood like that. That's a old school ritual. So you have this movie that comes out on February 14th, which is supposed to be Valentine's Day. I broke down Valentine's Day before, so you can go and listen to those old segments, what that really is, and Eros, or who you may call Cupid, and what he really represents, right? Um, so even just looking at the poster and the date, you're like, okay, time for rituals, right? Um, and one of the things about Zalim or Salim or Tiferes is that it throws things down. Like people can leave it, but they can't get to it. They can't enter it. And Dr. Ito and his wife Shirin, Dr. Shirin, were actually from Zalem. They were cast out because of their daughter, because of her defect. That's more in the manga. So all you really need to know is that they were cast out, right? So when you hear things like cast out, you're going to be dealing with a Luciferian concept and Lucifer's angels. Now, one of the things with Alita, when we talk about Lucifer, and this is just as in a movie breakdown, there's a lot of philosophy here. There was like some debate when the film came out, like, does Alita represent Lucifer? Is she a fallen angel? Or does she represent like more Michael or like even Yahweh Shai? Is she a redeemer? I would say probably closer to Lucifer because one of the things that you got to understand when you're dealing with Hollywood, you're dealing with a lot of Luciferians. And you may, or the average person may have been taught in church that Lucifer is the bad guy and God is the good guy, right? But from a Luciferian concept, Lucifer is the good guy who was trying to impart wisdom to mankind and redeem mankind through wisdom while God was trying, or Yahweh was trying to maintain a slave race, right? So that's closer to their perspective. So they may present a Luciferian story. Oh, we're going to get to Nova. We're going to get to Nova. uh, who was, we had a cameo by Edward Norton. And he played a character by the name of Nova. Desky Nova. We'll get into that though. So she could have very well been Lucifer, right? But you have to know how to shape your perception. You got to know how to see things to understand what it is that you're seeing, right? So one of the things that we find now I can skip because I already went through the whole John. Yeah, it is like Prometheus. This movie had a lot of Prometheus in it. You're gonna see why. You know, um, there was actually some stuff. I'll go to the chat while I'm going. I don't. I saw you guys had some stuff earlier. While I'm breaking down, I'll do both. Sovereign Eats, peace, Sister Moksha. That's interesting because I noticed how she seemed triggered whenever the blood surrounded her feet, as if the blood. Right. It was the Aphrodite ritual. In the Attila movie, it's funny he finds a sword by striking the ground and cutting his hand on the sword. Right. Yeah. That sword was given to him by deities from Mars. I want to show you why that's significant. Remember, she she fought for the Federation of Mars. So when she's talking to Hugo in the movie, he's pointing to Zalem and he's like, "That's where you're from. You're from there because she fell from Zalem." That's not true. She wasn't from Zalem. Now this is where it gets interesting, and this is where the deep spiritual philosophy comes in. Like it's such a beautiful thing to understand if you understand this part. So we're sold Zalem or Salim as like a heaven, and we can't buy our way into it. We can't do any of that. However, if we win at this rollerball thing, we can get to heaven. Meanwhile, one of the people who has a direct connection, Vector, um, he has to deliver. He's commissioned to deliver. He used to work in a scrap yard. So this goes back to the manga. He worked in a scrap yard. But he was a really good businessman, and he eventually built his way up till he was able to have interaction with Nova to a degree. We'll get into that. And he was then required to deliver the total of what would be a total human body in parts every month to Zalim. Okay? And this is important. So, one of the things that we find out about Nova, right? We'll get into Nova. Who is Nova? Nova is the puppet master in all of this. He's the ruler of Zalem, and he's also the ruler of Iron City, right? But here's some real important stuff here. Like no one gets to really see Nova, and Nova speaks through his adherents. Like he can transfer his voice and his consciousness into different people. Very key aspect, right? So let's deal with the cities for a second. I'm just gonna go through my notes a little bit. Um, like I said, it, what we're looking at here is Jacob's ladder. So you have this long elevator chute that's coming from Zalem down to Iron City, and it brings supplies. Of course, in conjunction to that, you also have where the garbage is dropped out of. Now, this elevator chute, it's tethered to the earth. Now, the reason why in the film, James Cameron, because it was done by James Cameron and Michael Rodriguez, Robert Rodriguez, they did a really good job in making it more scientifically accurate because if to have something like that tethered to the earth, you would have to put it near the equator because essentially, I don't have anything round, but if you had like a round ball and it was spinning, like the earth is, they tell us is spinning, right? And you had a chute attached to it and it wasn't at the center, it would it would be off balance, right? So they originally like they had it in Kansas City, but that scientifically wouldn't work. So that's why when you look at the actual film, they're in a Latin country and they have all this old Spanish architecture and whatnot like that, right? Um, but what you find is that this is the truth of it. So I'm going to give you the order of how it goes. I wrote it down real quick so I wouldn't forget. I thought I did. Right. So in the manga, you have Iron City, which is Earth, right? Which is Earth. And then you have a chute, an elevator chute that connects Earth to Tiferes, or in the film, we're called Itzalim. Then above Zalem, you have another chute that connects Zalem to Kethares. That same type of pipe, that tube that you see in the film. Then you have another tube that connects Ketharis to What did I have? Yeah, right. I had the order. I didn't want to mess up the order. You have another tube that connects Ketherus to the moon. Then you have another one that connects it from the moon to Mars, and then another tube that connects it from Mars to Venus, right? So, and then from Venus to what they call the Galileo satellites, right? Now, that's how it originally is connected. So, I want you to think about that for a second because you guys just kind of asked, like, okay, Zalem is like is Nova God? No. In fact, Nova is the closest thing Nova would be is Satan, right? Because he makes all of these promises to everyone about how he can bring them up to where he's at in solemn heaven, but he never really brings anyone up. Now let's skip ahead. He actually, when he finally does bring Dr. Sharin, who is Dr. Ito's estranged wife, because she's sleeping with Vector, he brings up her brain. He cannibalizes her. So the only way you get up to Zalem is just I'm taking your body parts. So that is symbolic of kind of like this concept of making a deal with the devil, right? So there's always this trick. You'll be here. You'll be here with me. Your brain will be. The rest of your body will be dead, right? But here's the thing. It's very similar to when Yahweh came out of the wilderness and Shaitan said, if you serve me, I will give you all these things. I will give you all of this. And, you know, Yahweh is like, no, I'm not doing that, right? Well, you are the ruler of this lower earth, but you don't actually own it. So you're lying. You can't give me this. You know what I'm saying? So it's very similar with Nova and everyone else. And that takes you back to the Prometheus concept. Are these gods or are they just scientists? Because Nova is a scientist, right? Now, I want you to think about the concept of a nova, right? And this ties into, I know I'm jumping around, but I don't know, that's the way my brain works. It's more fun that way anyway. I want you to think about the concept of the rollerball, like the whole, let's just say celebrity, right? Playing this sport, they become celebrities, right? And a lot of this movie is about star status, celebrities. Nova is a star, right? It means star. But a nova is a star that burns bright and then goes dim again. It only burns bright for a moment, like celebrity, right? And one of the important things about that is that um, nova or novus also means new. So it would be like new star. So you think about scripture, Lucifer, the star of the morning. So once you hear that correlation with star, you see he's in Solemn. He's like, this is where I'm at. I'm in Solemn. But we already know that that's not the highest heaven, because above Zalem or Tiferes, we also have Ketheres, and above Ketheres, we also have Mars, which is where Alita is actually from, because she was a part of the Mars Federation that came to fight these people, and they lost, but there were huge casualties on each side, right? So that's why you have these downed ships, and the only city that was left standing was Zalem and Iron City. So but Zalem has this parasitic relationship with Iron City, So everything else was pretty much destroyed because of this great war, which of course is a reference to the War of Michael. Um, so we'll get into that for a second. Um, but like I said, even when you look at the poster, one of the things that is said, you could like look up the image of the promotional poster. The tagline was, I think I wrote this down, an angel falls, right? So they're telling you right there, an angel falls and a warrior rises. So you just think about that for a second. Like, what does that sound like? Like an angel falls, but a warrior rises. I know I'm skipping. Just flow with me. It's more fun. You have to think about when Alita played rollerball, and at the end of the movie, and also in the manga and the anime, she basically becomes a rollerball star. So what you see at the end of the movie, she steps out into the stadium, the rollerball stadium. Now, what that represents, that within itself is a Luciferian concept. It's the same way that we pour our adoration and our spirit into people who have celebrity, and as a result, they're darn near able to build armies from that celebrity. Think about the Beehive. Think about Chief Keef. And that whole 300 movement up in Chicago. Like even G Unit, that was a real movement. So you have these armies that are formed just from celebrity. Now think about the whole concept of the movie. Like she's this is a battle that's gonna happen in heaven. So she's building her army on earth to go back to heaven to fight. Right? Now, how is she building her army? Through the celebrity of entertainment. I'm this rollerball athlete, and I go into the stadium, which represents the revealing of the beast. You see, it's a lot of deep stuff going on there. So one of the things that I'll get into, when she finds the ship, right, which is the URM, the United, I think, Rebellion of Mars, something like that. But this is her. This is where she's from. She's a berserker in this particular army, with the title of 99. Her name is just 99. Also significant, right? Now, remember, like I told you earlier, if you read the manga, you'll find out that she was born a human baby. Her name was Yoko, and when she was a baby, her parents were killed in an attack because they're at war. And she later then joined, like she was given a cybernetic body. So now, I want you to think of the cyborgs. They're very important because when you look at Iron City, there's all of these different like it's a very normal thing. The year is 2536, right? So that's like, you know, roughly 550 years from now, right? Where um, cybernetics is just a normal thing. I mean, in many senses, it is today. I mean, people wear prosthetic limbs and contact lenses and things like that. Those are all forms of cybernetic enhancements. Um, so the concept there again, as a baby, she joins the military. She becomes Trooper 99. We see her in a fight on the moon at one point, and she's fighting alongside one of her, it was actually Michelle Rodriguez who played her, and they're going up the chute or the tube, and essentially again they lost. So all of these different remnants of the war, one of the things that we see, like when they go to when she goes into the water and looks at that ship and finds the berserker suit, the ship is covered in algae. Now what that represents is how nature, or the natural state of things, will always seek to reclaim its position, right? So that was symbology in there. So just like she's naturally a warrior, like he was like, man, your heart could power this city for several years based on the technology that it was made with. At your core, this is what you are, this particular thing. And she knew, well, at my core, I'm a killer, I'm a warrior. you know so at some point, water is going to reach its own level, or things are going to take on, or regain and reclaim their natural form, right? So like I said, there's battles between Earth and Mars, because essentially, uh, Earth was running out of resources, so they sent people to colonize Mars. And what happened? You don't find this out in the movie again. This before. What happened? Basically, it became like a real kind of imperialistic kind of situation, and the colonists was like, nah. They fought back, right? Now, who's right, who's wrong? We don't really know. Alita sometimes like has this innate sense that she's right, like the Martians were right. But that's the beauty of the philosophy of the movie. And Hugo explains, like, he's like, yeah, the city will corrupt you. Like, everybody here changes, they become different, right? And we don't know, we start to understand that in order to reclaim identity, in order to even maybe regain your throne, at some point you're going to have to be exposed and do something that's wrong or that may appear sinful. I did a segment years ago called The Original Sin, that some people didn't like because they didn't actually listen to it. They just looked at the site, the title, and thought I was talking about some Christian stuff. Who, people are foolish sometimes. But I was talking about how in order to go beyond where you were created to be, you have to break the original code, you know, and that's what we see at the end of the movie when she steps into the arena. Now she's like Lucifer, who's like, I'm gonna soar above your throne, right? And the throne to soar above is Nova's throne, is Zalem, right? So she has to do that as a part of her redemption. Um, Now, we also get this idea, this concept of heaven and earth or heaven and hell. We got the three layers because Zalem is supposed to be, again, a representation of heaven, but it's a false heaven. Now, one of the reasons why that's so amazing and it's such a deep philosophical value that they hit upon, because how many of us are doing things to get into a heaven that ain't even the actual heaven, right? Because Zalem essentially is heaven on earth. It's in Earth's atmosphere. It's not in outer space. And one of the things that you've heard me say many times when you look at certain people's culture and their religious pantheons, like the Greeks, like the Romans, their heaven is on earth. It's their Athena, or they want to go to Valhalla, but they want to go to a place that is just on earth, but it's hard to get to, like Zam. Whereas when you look at a more Eastern philosophy, or look at the Zulu, who said, no, our heaven, our home is Mars. We're from Mars. The Yoruba, you look at some of the earlier Patakis, it speaks about an off-world home. Pretty much every Eastern tradition, your home is not here on the planet. When you look at Hebraic tradition, Kabbalistic tradition, not here on the planet, right? So you start to see that Zalem itself, though we're painted the picture that it's a heaven, it ain't even heaven. At least in Elysium was off planet, but it was man made. So but it was at least off the planet. So these people are hoping and struggling and wanting to go to this place that Novus has established as a pseudo heaven because he's not God. We get a sense of his immortality through the manga, but he ain't God because he's not functioning from the Galileo satellites. He's not functioning from the moon. He's not functioning from Mars. He's not even functioning from Ketharis. He's at the bottom floating city. He's at the bottom. Now, underneath that, of course, is Scrap Iron City. And then underneath that, when we know that Alita has that fight, and he's there, welcome to my world. That was symbolic of her going down into hell. That's where she lost her body when she had that fight down there. Now you notice the actual hunter warrior. Actually, before we get into the hunter warrior, there's something that I wanted to share. I wanted to tap on that Vector had said, which is another important thing. Which was really I mean, he didn't say it was a quote, but he said, I would rather rule in hell than serve in heaven. Now, if any of you have ever read the poem Paradise Lost by John Milton, um, that's a line that was actually said by the character who's supposed to be like Lucifer, you know. So that was a key line there, because the truth is he was right. There were certain people in the film that were right, and we didn't know they were right because of the way the film was depicted. Like, yeah, you're never going to get to Zalem. You're never going to be in heaven. So you might as well rule here. Dr. Ito said the same thing, even though he seemed um, very pessimistic all the time. Like, just stay here, you're good. He was right. He was from Zalem. He's like, look, basically, it's a scam. You're never going to get to Zalem. It's a scam. He said, nobody gets there. Nobody goes there. You know, even those who won the rollerball, you're not going there. He's going to cut your body up into pieces. You know, so that was a part of the satanic aspect too. Now, here's the thing that I was tapping on with the innocence. Alita, you know, and in the original piece, I sort of, her name is Gali, by the way. Gali. There's a question here. What did I do? Arlene is now a moderator. All right, I just made you a moderator by mistake. But anyway, uh, is that all right? Sure. Is that why the doctor told her when if she went to the floating city, she would be at the bottom of the food chain? Food chain, excuse me. Yeah, because he knew like Zalem is at the bottom. You over here dealing with Satan. You thinking you're dealing with a higher deity, but there's nothing up there. In fact, we have it better down here, which she came to understand later. So, like when Hugo, and you really get this concept in the anime, when Hugo is like, he gets his cybernetic body, he's like, I'm out, I'm going up there. She's like, why go? Stay here with me. We can be in love. We can love each other. We can, because that's the Wizard of Oz piece. She's trying to explain to him the things that you were striving for, you already have down here, because there's nothing greater than love. And you're going up there to achieve some form of heaven, but we can have heaven right here, right? And he ends up losing his life, trying to get to a false heaven. And again, that was just always so deep to me, because I think about so many preachers who sit up in buildings and preach a false heaven that they don't even understand themselves. And they're giving you all these rules that make no sense, or not giving you the real rules to get someplace that's actually controlled by Satan. So you are dying and thinking that when I die, I'm going to be with my Lord. No, you're not. You're going to be with the Lord, but you ain't going to be with Yah. Because you fell for the trick of the star of the morning, or Novus. You fell for that particular trick, the Neo star. There's an old star and there's a new star. Now let's get into the old star for a second. So when Dr. Ito is explaining, so Zalem is a fictitious heaven, it reminds me of the Emerald City then. Um, well, with the Wizard of Oz, Emerald City was not a fictitious heaven, but the ruler of it was fictitious, right? So the ruler of the wizard himself was just a failed politician. That's all. He was nothing more than that. Um, but the Emerald City was actually a place of great power and magic. It was the heart chakra. So the city was cool. It was the person in it. you know. But similar to Zalem is not really the issue. It's the interpretation that has been given about Zalem by Novus. Now, what's important with Novus, when you look at the name too, you also have very similar in Neva. Neva in Hebrew, it deals with the concept of speech, and that's the science and the gift of Novus. It's his speech. So the same way he's able to trick people into getting body parts and doing this and doing that, I'll bring you to heaven. He's able to use speech. He's also able to transfer into certain people who have become, who have basically sold their soul to him. He's able to transfer into them and speak to them. You notice, like when Ali Mashallah or Vector is speaking, his eyes turn blue. Very, very key there. But one of the things that you start to understand is um, the calculating spirit of Novus. He's a scientist, And all of us who are here on Earth are nothing but his experiment. It's similar to Prometheus in that sense. We are just his experiment. So he's running different plays to peep different factors. Let me do this, see if this happens. Let me do that, see if that happens. He's just running different stats basically, because he's not necessarily um, concerned. He knows like y'all ain't coming up here anyway. Um, but we are the experiment. It's an important thing to consider and think about. Like again, when you're worshiping a false idol, and you might that idol may be alive and active, but it's a false idol. So you could be someone else's religious experiment, or an experiment in psychometrics. If I do this, they'll do this. If I do that, they do that. If I do that, I can push them and pull them. And then I have this arena or this stadium or this circle. And like I've taught you guys before, the original name of what you call the churches was, the ecclesiasticals. So, or the ecclesiasticus. So the word, it was the Romans who came up with this concept of church, because church means circle. And that's why they would sit in a circle in the arena. And the circle or the church also is where you get the word circus. So in the circus, you had a person in the middle called the ringleader, and it was all these different things going on that would keep your attention while you sat in this circle. Well, that's what the church is. But you see the same thing with Alita at the end when she's in the stadium and she raises her sword up. You see, that was the sword saying, like, I'm going to war against heaven, because she points her sword to heaven in the middle of the church slash circus. You see, it's basically the same the same thing, unfortunately. Um, so again, like I said, when she goes down into the pit to fight Gurushka, and he's a very important character because, in many senses, he represents us, right? Um, One of the things that you'll notice with all of these hunter warriors who have the cybernetics, and just to get it out the way, you got to go to the book of Enoch. The cyborgs are Nephilim, period, right? They're part human, part creation of something else, right? Um, so that concept of with Dr. Ito, he has dedicated his life to the service of the Nephilim. That's what he considers to be his redemption. So he comes to the earth. He's not really charging the money, things like that. He's repairing them. His religion is the Nephilim, right? And one of the things that's important about the character of Grishka that is really, really key for us is that every time he comes up against a righteous force, Alita, and loses, he goes back to his source and adds on components of this fallen earth, thinking that, well, once I get this, I'll be able to win. And you notice that if you look at all of the other cyborgs, they're all essentially um, the size of a regular human, right? And when you look at, yeah, like you said, it's interesting that Nova used the melanated man to speak through. And if you look at the manga, if you look at the cartoon, Vector is a melanated man. You know, very interesting again for Japanese anime, that he is specifically a bald headed. He's bald headed in the anime, and he's got like a beard. And he originally was in a wheelchair, and he was able to get cybernetics to get some legs, but he was originally in a wheelchair, and he smokes a cigar all the time. But there was a key line even there where when Alita kills him, and she tells Nova, you just lost a puppet. That was a key line because she's making it clear, like, I know he's not the problem, you're the problem. And she's saying, I know where to target my rage to. And then Nova responds and is like, no one player is bigger than the game, basically, which was a cold line. Like, he was like, the game still goes on. This is just one dude, but so that was a very truthful exchange between Alita and Nova. Like, yeah, I killed your puppet, one puppet down, you know, because you are pulling the strings. I'm gonna get to you, right? Um, but like I was saying, was that concept again of her being the champion, and she has a sword ready to fight, pointed to heaven, is that concept of I will ascend into heaven. Like I'm, which Lucifer said, like I'm ascending into heaven. I'm getting there, and I'm going to rule, essentially. Um, Now, Gruishka, like I said, he's important because if you notice, he's larger than most of the other cyborgs, like in size. He's huge, right? So he represents like the grotesqueness of our human reality, all the things we add on to us, right? And then what happens is that when he's defeated and he drops down into the pit again, he said, "I'll get you, flea." He keeps calling her a flea, which was really significant. That was what Aristotle called himself. You know, no, Socrates. I'm sorry. What Socrates called himself when he was on trial. He said, "I'm nothing but a flea tick." You know, so there was a lot of symbolism there. But um, every time he goes back, like to get repaired, they make him even bigger than he was before. So he's constantly adding on all of these things instead of just doing the right thing. So that was like such a key component to how we relate a lot of times to righteous adversity on the planet, instead of sometimes even becoming smaller, instead of minimizing and becoming less of a materialistic creation, we add more materialism onto ourselves, thinking that that will be some sort of buffer from the karma of righteous retribution. You know, um, so that piece was very key. Um, so again, you know, Alita is a part of the United Republic of Mars, and Gelda is the one she's fighting with, who's played by Michelle Rodriguez. She has a short kind of cameo, um, and you see that they're fighting in the Great War. Now, here's something I wanted to point out too: was that when Alita sliced Zapan's face, Zapan was the dude who had the titanium goatee. You see, like they get their limbs cut off, this and that. They move through it, but when the face is cut, he's like, "Ah, my face." But one of the things that you saw underneath the face was a robotic face. So that wasn't actually a human face, and then the rest of his body was cybernetic. So you have to start asking yourself a question like, are they more human or more robot? Right? And why was he so obsessed? Because she was like, he spends more money on his face than he does the rest of his body, right? Because the concept again there was the vanity of it all, which again was a very important concept to kind of to be able to cue into. Like we're speaking about the vanity, the false mirror, even the false promises. Peace, Eddie Moon, in that sense. Um, so Hugo says a quote. I wrote this down. I thought it was cool. When he says, "The strong prey on the weak down here. You got to stay focused on your dream." You know, the dream. Remember the name of the manga Gunum is Agun. Agun means the gun dream. So, and then he says in the beginning, "What are you dreaming? What are you dreaming of, my little angel?" So it's this concept again of the reincarnation, of course, the karma, her being able to reclaim identity, but what aspects are real and what aspects aren't? Is this really a dream? And where is my real self held? Where is my true identity held? Nova says something that's interesting, which gives you that satanic aspect. He says, I found the only way to enjoy immortality is to watch others die. That was key. You know, when I kind of saw that line, it just kind of made me think about, I just thought it was brilliant of Yukito Koshiro, because it's just like it made me think about people who do really delight in the suffering of others, and that's the only enjoyment that they really receive, because their experience is just too long. Maybe because they keep coming back to the earth, coming back to the earth. They refuse to do right. They're like the cyborg who's like, instead of just recognizing I'm on the wrong team, I'm gonna go get some more parts. Put some more parts. Give me another gun. Give me this. Give me that. I'm gonna keep making myself more and more grotesque and erasing more and more of my humanity. You know, and there was some deep things there, like even in terms of like how they have to have their own spine. And the heart thing and all that. There was a lot. Um, there was a lot of symbolism in that sense. But like I said, we're speaking about the Nephilim, and one of the things, this is the note that I wanted to share that I thought was cool. Why I just not cool, but something I thought about was Salem, because these are fallen cities, right? Everything here is about falling. If you read Revelations 18:11, right? And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her. We're talking about Babylon. No man buyeth their merchandise anymore. The merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones and of pearls and fine linen and purple and scarlet and silk and all thine wood and all manner vessels of ivory and all manner vessels of most precious wood and of brass and iron and marble and cinnamon and odors and ointments and frankincense and wine and oil and fine flour and wheat and beast and sheep and horses and chariots, and here we go, and slaves and souls of men. Now, really, I read all of that just um, the last four words, to be honest. And souls of men. You see, that was the thing with Nova. Nova was capturing souls, and that there was a war between Nova and Alita, because Alita has the Sith. Her sword is the Sith, and she's gonna use that. That's the soul capture. That's what the Grim Reaper uses, and you have images of the Grim Reaper right in the beginning. You see the woman with the redded hood, and she turns out to be a cyborg, and she's got these claws as hands, and they're like Siths. That was a foreshadowing of the capturing of souls, right? So whereas Novus has captured these souls, and then you have people from Mars, from the United Republic of Mars, and then you have these people from Earth. They all have converged on Iron City. Like, yeah, you lost, we lost too. Well, this is where we at, right? You have now a leader who's saying, well, I'm going to capture these souls. But Nova's also capturing souls at the same time. He's using language, she's using her celebrity. And so it's very deep. It's very deep. It causes you to kind of tie into the concept of celebrity, ism as a religion, as a spirituality. Um, but this concept of uh, like I read in Revelations, when you read part of that section too, it talks about New Jerusalem, right, and the walls of New Jerusalem, and the fallen, and how New Jerusalem will fall. So we get this foreshadowing that Zalim or Selim or Tiferes, you know, there is a battle between worlds. Now we already know that Mars went to war against Earth, right? But there's a battle between Iron City, or there will be. There's going to be a leader too, because a leader too, she's got to go and confront Novus, and it's going to be a battle between the fallen city and heaven, essentially. And this comes straight out of Revelations. New Jerusalem, New Salem. a new city of peace, a new city of Salim, you know. So there's I want to just touch upon something quickly. When I told you about her innocence, right? So when she's fighting the fighting style, and she, Ito was like, it was called Panzer Kunst, I think was the name. I wrote it down in case I said it wrong. Panzer Kunst, right, was the fighting style. And he's like, man, even looking at her body and stuff, he's like, we haven't seen this for like 300 years. So she's like, so you telling me I'm 300 years old? And he's like, yeah, you're 300 years old, right? So what does that mean? That means that she existed prior to the corruption of the city. That's why that was so key. So when she comes into this environment, she's not affected in the same way, and she's able to be the champion because she's not as susceptible to the evil of the city, which is what makes her, gives her this heart, gives her this strength. She's not weakened by the sin of the city, if you will. She's not weakened by that. Um, and like I said, in order to get to that space, she uses action to reclaim and to remember who she is. Now, here's the important thing that you also, like I say, I associate her more with Lucifer, because there's a part where she goes to be, she goes to sign up to be a hunter warrior. And Hugo says, Doc's going to be pissed, like when he finds out. And she says, since when do I live by the rules? She said, and which rules do I live by? That was a key line, right? So she's saying, I'm like he said, she said, I'm not your daughter, but I'm not subject to the rules of heaven or earth or hell. I'm a redeemer. And in order for me to fulfill my purpose and my mission, I have to move as I see myself. So even when she received her new body, and the new body utilized nanotechnology, I mean, it had breast and everything. Like, this is how I see myself. So my body's gonna form based on my own self-image, not on you wanted me to stay somewhere and be safe, you wanted to be my girlfriend, you wanted me to just, play rollerball or whatever. This is my self-image. I'm a berserker. I'm a killer, but I'm a woman. So it's also a coming of age story. To be honest, it's also a coming of age story. Um, So yeah, that's basically the gist of it. There's so much more though, like, cause there's a lot with Vector as well, and this concept of Nova being Yahweh, as Alita is Lucifer, you know, um, and you just kind of being warned, or kind of being told in a sense that there is an impending war. But one of the things too is always to remember with the Tiferet or the Salem connection, you're looking at Jacob's ladder. And when you study the science of Jacob's ladder, it just doesn't connect two realms. It's almost like the Rainbow Bridge in Nordic, mythology. It's connecting, different worlds. There's different realms, and this is going from this realm to this realm to this realm to this realm to this realm. So that's kind of with the ladder there. And Iron City, or the scrapyard, it is there to feed Zalem. It's Zalem is really a parasite. So you start to look at, well, maybe some of our religious concepts, are they parasitic? Am I truly being fed? Am I truly being fed by my heaven concept? Or am I pouring my all into it for a promise of something that now I don't really know if I'm going to get to it? But I don't know how I'm going to get there. When we talk about having a new body or a revelated body, what does that really mean? Is it going to be like my brain in a jar, up in this heaven? Or am I aiming too low, right? Am I like the ancient Greeks that were just aiming for heaven on earth? Is there something better? Because when you look at the destruction of Babylon, I'll get into, because I'm going to share that song right? I said it wasn't a promise though, but I did say I would try to finish it before Sabbath. Um, so yeah, I got like tonight, so I'll try to do that. But Babylon is falling, right? But you look at the destruction of Babylon. The Most High brought destruction of Babylon primarily because of the way Babylon did business. That's what I just read to you in Revelations 18 when it's talking about that, and the merchants, it starts there, and the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise anymore. It was her economic processes and activities and conduct that brought out the wickedness of Babylon. And you think about the importance there in the which the crucial aspect of what economics really are, that you could be doing business so wickedly that the creator will destroy your whole home. Say, I'm going to destroy this whole city because the way you guys are performing your economic duties is like, like he's like, we ain't buying your the souls of men, we ain't buying your slaves, we ain't buying your cotton, your silk, your cinnamon, none of that. And I'm going to destroy it. And you read in some of the Kabbalistic teachings, it teaches about the descending of New Jerusalem, which is on the outer walls of Babylon. So what that means, the outer walls, it's like um, big fish eat little fish. But you have a smaller city, let's say that's Babylon, and then you have a bigger one in bigger circumference, and that one descends and crushes the smaller city, right? So that concept is very present as well as in this film with the relationship between Salem and Iron City. You know, but again, like I said, you're talking about Jacob's ladder. So there's multiple levels. Just like when she fell down into the pit in Fort Gurushka, there were multiple levels of the pit. There are multiple levels of hell as well. So there's a lot that you can take from this film in terms of self identity, in terms of worshiping a false god, you know, um, or attributing a sense of spiritual righteousness and a sense of spiritual security, and transferring that over to people who have nothing but celebrity status, and being fooled in that way, and warring against your God because you've aligned yourself with a celebrity. That's a very common one, right? You know, yeah, I don't want to start, you know, getting on people, but there's a lot of celebrities that are I've watched over the years who have really distracted people. Simple things like when they receive awards, and I want to thank first my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Like, what are you talking about? Like, who's that? You know what I'm saying? Like, what the heck are you talking about? And then, what are you thanking them for? For football? Like that? You think Jesus got something to do with that? You know, or for that song, your stripper song that you just, what I'm saying? You went platinum. You want to thank Jesus Christ for that? You know what I'm saying? Um, like, but just the fact that you put that out there and you cause that level of blasphemy, even with the higher concept, but now you redirect people to this false god. Honestly, this false god, this false Messiah. Who the heck is Jesus? You know, and that's like what Novus is. Yeah, listen to the similarity in the names. You know, and bright and morning star, star of the morning. Yeah, it sound kind of similar, right? But that's another conversation that I think I've already had with you. You know, so yeah, there's so many different things. Like I said, you can pull from the film. This could really have been a 5-hour breakdown because I left a lot out, like especially even in the names, vectors, character, Desky Novus. When you start to get into the mango. I want a mango. But yeah, I'm gonna go. I mean, mango after this. But the manga, the manga. But they start to get into his character more in the actual manga, and just like how twisted he actually is, as a person. So there's so many other things that you could pull from Alita. But like I said, when I saw the poster, I got everything I needed. War in Heaven, Battle Angel, falls an angel, rises a warrior. I'm like, damn. So there's a war coming. And understand that a lot of times these films are the precipitation of such. You know, we're dealing with situations in this country, in the U.S. now, where there is a stark divide between different kinds of people. There are people who have different, and I'm not talking about racially. I'm talking about people who have philosophical differences as it relates to science. There's a stark divide, and there's a war. There's a war coming. I mean, that's obvious. I mean, anybody could see that there's a war, and it's going to start with the war for resources. Oh, you don't have that? Well, you can't come in here. You can't go to school here. You can't work here. You can't get on this plane. You can't get on this boat. You don't have that. You know, um, so there are people who are already being cut off from certain resources because of their philosophical and scientific stance. And that's a form of scientific tyranny and warfare. I'm going to leave it at that. You know why. You know. So let's see. Hopefully, we'll be all right with just that little bit. You know. So yeah, there's a lot again, like I said, to be pulled, and Hugo as well, constantly looking up. He's looking up, and not realizing what he has already with him. You know, yeah, I know you do. But not realizing what he has already with him on the ground. You have everything you need right here. Your friends, this woman, because there's a whole concept in that too. He's like, oh, she's a hard body. No, she's a machine. And then if you look at the scene where where Dr. Ito is like working on her at one point, you get to see her anatomy. So that was one of the things that I caught, and I was like, it's like a Barbie doll. It's just smooth down there. So what are y'all gonna do? you know, this is a machine. This is clearly a machine. Um, but I guess in 550 years from now, we'll be totally cool with, you know, having relationships with machines. Kind of like how we have with our phones and stuff now. But so anyway, so yeah, that is Alita Battle Angel. I didn't go through it step by step by step by step by step, but you should have watched it anyway. So I just wanted to pull out some of the spiritual aspects and the esoteric aspects, and maybe give you some places where you could go look and like go read Revelations 18, read the Book of Enoch, and learn more about the Nephilim and about the disturbing of the bloodlines, because that's what Alita really represents when it says that she's highborn. One of the reasons, the translations of her name is highborn, right? So that's another aspect. Well, pureborn, you know, that's why she was like, she's basically like one of the most powerful beings in the universe, you know. But she's old, she's ancient, and very powerful and very advanced, um, and she's not Dr. Ito's creation. She is her own creation, because that's through the nanotechnology, which was another important part, because he was like, man, if you break this body, I can't fix this one. Which shows that um, she's Nephilim, but she's more angel than actual the blend, like some of those other hunter warriors and whatnot like that. Um, so again, there's a lot of points, and I like to leave things open when I do breakdowns a little bit, because you will see other things yourself, and you will contribute other ideas to the bill. But I strongly urge you, if you've watched it, watch it again, And if you have not watched it, go watch it. The manga is good too, but like I said, you could build a whole life philosophy off of Alita. I'm telling you, you can. Because everything is pretty much there. Like and it's old. It's like I said, from the '90s. But you have the Wizard of Oz stories in there. But you also have the final the war in heaven. You have that aspect as well. You have a different take on the Luciferian aspect, on the power of innocence, and how that's maintained, um, the power of duality, and how just like Hugo was a good guy, but at the same time he's cutting people's body parts off. Dr. Sharin, she loved her daughter and whatnot, but she redeemed herself at the end where she was like, I'm a scientist, but I'm also a mother. And she realized all the damage that she caused to people in Iron City. So what you see throughout the whole film is this dualism. Like you have a leader and you're rooting for her, but she's a killer. So that concept of, like she said, what rules apply to me. Sometimes, in order for us to ascend, we have to do a little dirt. That's that's the bottom line. We got to do a little dirt. Like I've said many times, even in this country, when you see these multi billionaires and billionaires, or even multi-millionaires, and they do interviews, especially these rappers, like especially these athletes and these musicians, and they say like, well, is there any advice? If there's any advice that you could give to anybody, who's looking to be where you at, what's the advice that you would give them? And they always say the same thing, you know, you got to stay focused. If you got a dream, you got to go for it. Just stay focused. Don't let nobody tell you you can't do it. If you got something you want to do, you just do it. That's BS. That don't work. That don't work. You know, if you want to make $1 billion in this country, you got to kill somebody. That's how you make money in America. You got to kill somebody. Point blank. All that hold on to your dreams, and you got the picture of the cat in the guidance counselor's office. Hang in there. That doesn't work. You know what I mean? So that's a part of the false religions, the false spirituality. These people who you see in those positions, they kill people. Now, did they pull the trigger? I mean, I don't like calling people out, but I mean, I used to look at Dr. Dre all the time. I love, like, Dre is like, for a musician, for someone who's involved in art, like Dre is like a deity. Like he's just amazing. Quincy Jones is someone I mean, from a little boy, was heavy into Quincy Jones, right? These dudes, like their music and their lifestyle has killed people. You know what I'm saying? Like, so there's different ways that it happens, man. Sometimes it's um it's the way you step over people. Sometimes it's the people you betray who helped you coming up. Sometimes it's the images that you sell yourself to put out there. You like some guys, they put on the other kind of clothes, that are pertaining to somebody else, or they do that type of stuff, or they get themselves kind of wrapped up in physical rituals that go against maybe their preference, you know, another form of killing people. You got ancestors supposed to come through you. They ain't coming through now. So you want to get it like that, you got to kill people. Point blank. Anybody you see in this country is a multi-millionaire, they kill people. Now, whether that means they own some fast food restaurants or they strengthen the standing of the stock market, they invested in companies that are killing people, that have slave labor or are keeping people oppressed. However it is, that's how they got where they got. That's what it is, you know. So this film actually touches upon that. Like, yeah, you got to do a little dirt. You want to get to heaven? You want to get to heaven? You got to kill some people. I know it's a weird concept, but it's a true one, you know, and sometimes very difficult for people to take on. No different than the vegetarian concept, you know. Well, animals have nervous systems, so we shouldn't eat them because they feel the pain, but plants don't have a nervous system. You don't understand a plant. You still trying to understand yourself. Either way, you're destroying something in order for you to continue to live. Maybe that carrot didn't want to be chopped up. Maybe it was fine in the shape that it was, but you destroyed it so that it could serve you, right? And I don't have a problem with that. That's what it is on this planet. You got to kill to live, in one shape, form, or fashion. Now, some could say, but yeah, the planet is still, I mean, the carrot is still organic matter. When it comes out of me, yeah, but it's no longer what it was because ain't nobody sifting through that to pick out the orange pieces and rinse them off and eat them. It's not what it was. You destroyed that and turned it into something else. So that's a part of what Hugo was saying that the city will do. It changes people, you know. But in order for you to move through this experience and be prepared for this war, you're gonna have to be changed. And you can't sit in the same comfort that you've always sat in. That's the esoteric aspect of this. That's why her body was destroyed. And when her body was destroyed, then she was able to understand, she was able to use that nanotechnology and say, this is the type of body I need for what it is that I need to do now. Because now I understand my purpose. I didn't before I went through this destruction process. All right. So that has been Alita Battle Angel. I didn't introduce myself, but I'm Chief Yuya. So I'll just say it at the end. And next strong we'll be back with Low. I don't know what you breaking down, Low. But I wanted to do this one after Prometheus because it's directly related to Prometheus and the Nephilim and the scientists, who experiment on us. So with that, I bid you all adieu, and I will that you have a peaceful, 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 peaceful evening, and definitely a safe one. All right. So everyone be well. Shalom.